Enter a mysterious girl being chased in space, and just as she is about to be captured, she manages to escape. Meanwhile, on Earth, at Seinen High School, a boy named Rito plans on confessing to the girl of his dreams, Saranji Haruna. But he's quite shy on how to approach her, and whenever he tries to confess his feelings, something inconvenient happens and gets in his way. After school, as Haruna is about to walk by, just when he is about to confess to her, the spaceship from earlier crash lands and nearly crushes him. As such, Rito returns home sulking over yet another failed mission to confess. Thus, he goes to his room and begins to talk with his best friend Sariyama Kenichi, who understands him very well and is not surprised by another failure. However, Sariyama advises him to learn how to get used to being around girls. Meanwhile, Rito continues to sulk in the bathtub. Suddenly, the mysterious girl from before appears in front of him, causing him to accidentally be sussy. Later in his room, the girl introduces herself as Lala Sadalan Deviluk, an alien from the planet Deviluk. She explains that she used a magical invention to randomly teleport into the tub to avoid being captured. Her companion robot, Peak, arrives as well and reunites with her. Suddenly, Maul and Smuts, the ones who pursued Lala, come into the room having followed Peak. Now in a predicament, Rito reluctantly helps Lala escape over the rooftops. As they get to normal ground, the men from before catch up to them. Suddenly, another spaceship appears and a man named Zastin Deviluk emerges from it. It is then revealed that Lala is actually a princess running away from home due to arranged meetings for a suitor for her to marry, and the three aliens are here to take her home. Lala then gets a cell phone-like device out and summons the Go-Go Vacuum Kun, a giant octopus-like machine that she uses to suck in Zastin and the others. However, it continues to suck in everything else, including Rito, but Lala doesn't remember how to turn it off. As Rito gets sucked halfway in, the machine gets clogged up and suddenly explodes. The next day, a frustrated Rito doesn't want anything to do with her ever again. On his way to school, he meets up with Haruna. He now thinks it's a good opportunity to confess to her, which he finally does, but he accidentally shyly confesses with his eyes closed to Lala, who coincidentally appears in front of him. Rito has yet again made another epic failure to confess to the girl he truly loves. Lala, however, is happy to hear this and hugs him, saying they are now engaged to be married, much to his dismay. At the Yuki residence, Rito wakes up only to find Lala sleeping next to him, so he falls off his bed in shock. Shortly after, Rito's little sister, Mikan, walks in and sees Lala but is unfazed by her, so she leaves the room normally like nothing ever happened. Peak then transforms into Lala's dress form for her to wear, and she explains that it's normal for people that are engaged to live together, although Rito doesn't recall any sort of proposal. Suddenly, Zastin appears and explains that according to Deviluk traditions, Rito became engaged when he sussy touched her at 8:43 a.m. However, Rito tries to explain the misunderstanding, but Zastin angrily denies, saying that by annulling the engagement would mean declaring war on the planet Deviluk, and the Emperor of the Galaxy will destroy Earth. Zastin continues on to explain that by marrying Lala, he will take her dad's position as king, and it's not a position for weaklings. Back at school, Rito meets up with Sariyama, who noticed that he's depressed due to Haruna, who finally notices Rito but looks away from him. After class, he tries to explain what actually happened, but he follows her to the girls' changing room, which he cannot go into. Elsewhere, as Lala looks for Rito, she manages to attract the attention of the students. As such, Rito hears her and asks what she's doing at his school, and when Sariyama and the boys notice how close they are, Lala reveals to them that she is his bride. Thus, filled with jealousy, the boys begin chasing after him, but Lala saves him by warping them out of there. After school, he once again finds Zastin in his living room with Mikan, who is now informed about his engagement with the alien princess. Now more than ever, Rito finds himself in a desperate situation trying to clear the misunderstanding. Later, Zastin explains that he can actually cancel the engagement within the first 3 days by grabbing Lala's chest again before 8:43 a.m. on the final day, so he embarks on his mission. However, he fails at every chance he gets, and as he continues to try, something inconvenient always gets in his way. On the final day, with 1 hour left, he asks Lala to come with him, and by a river, he asks her about the engagement, which she is very happy about. She also explains that she was always getting pushed into meetings for future candidates, doing so for the sake of the royal throne. After hearing this, Rito gets worried about how she would respond if he broke the engagement. However, his clock rings, noting that his time to cancel the engagement is finally up. The next day, Rito is off to school with Zastin and his subordinates, who congratulate the duo. At school, he begins being sad over the sudden changes in his life, especially about what he should do with Haruna. Nevertheless, his homeroom teacher announces a new transfer student, who turns out to actually be Lala, much to his shock and grief. So he scolds Lala for transferring to his school, but she responds by saying she just wanted to be close to him. Nevertheless, he warns her not to stand out too much or else her true identity will be in jeopardy. However, she ends up doing abnormal things in class like drawing weird pictures and overusing her strength in gym class. At the same time, the boys now resent him due to jealousy regarding Lala. Thus, Rito scolds Lala again, so she promises to be more careful. Elsewhere, Haruna starts thinking about how close Rito is to Lala, and when they encounter each other during an awkward moment, Rito blurts out asking her what she thinks of Lala, only for Haruna to say that they're a good match. Back at his house, Rito becomes saddened due to Haruna's revelation, and upon noticing this, Mikan suggests that they should all go out tomorrow since Lala isn't accustomed to Earth yet. The next day, the siblings show Lala around much to her interest, but she catches the attention of the crowd, so gets peeked to scan other people's clothes, allowing her to transform into a more suitable outfit. Afterwards, Rito got Lala a doll that she seems to enjoy a lot. Later, Rito notices that Lala's clothes are withering away, signaling that Peek is slowly losing power so her clothes will soon disappear. Thus, the siblings hide Lala away in a sussy store, while Mikan goes off to find her some clothes. Meanwhile, they find Haruna close by, where Rito is again worried about what she might be thinking of now. Nevertheless, the group heads towards an aquarium and Lala also invites Haruna to tag along. Upon arriving, Lala starts running around and gets utterly excited at the sight of multiple fish species, causing Rito to be embarrassed. However, Haruna apologizes for seemingly bothering them, but Rito denies it by saying it's fun having more people. At the same time, Mikan finally notices Rito's feelings for Haruna, so she decides to be his wingman and goes looking for Lala. Now alone, Haruna grabs him by the arm and begins to attempt her confession, only to be suddenly interrupted by a flood. Earlier, it's revealed that a lost Lala attempted to add more water to the fish tanks only to accidentally flood the area. As such, Lala comes in like a wrecking ball on top of a shark, while the rest frantically try to escape from the flooding aquarium. Nevertheless, at the end of the day, Haruna still says she really had some fun. Mission accomplished. The next day is head off to school. Rito seems to be in a happier mood than usual. Coincidentally, they also encounter Haruna on their way, but Rito accidentally trips and falls on her in a sussy way, only for Haruna to run after punishing him. At a misty lake in Rito's dream, he tells Haruna that he has no relationship with Lala, and just as he was about to confess, two huge balloons suddenly inflate on his face. He then wakes up only to find Lala in his bed again, much to his shock. At breakfast, Lala gets overexcited on how warm it is, only for Zastan to pop in and explain that as the princess of Deviluk, they'd have to check for food poisoning, causing it to go cold. Back at the school rooftop, a saddened Rito is greeted by Zastan, who threatens him and asks if he has any second thoughts at all about his engagement. Zastan then continues by telling him that the marriage will make him the next king of Deviluk. As such, he will have to lead intergalactic wars in expanding or defending his kingdom, only for Rito to imagine himself losing. Nevertheless, at home, Mikan prepares dinner for everyone, including Zastan, who along with Lala have taken extreme liking to the food. Lala then decides to cook Deviluk food. However, her cooking skills leads to the burning of the whole kitchen, and when she has Rito to try her concoction, he nearly died. Thus, Rito tells her that he won't marry someone who can't cook, which hurts Lala's feelings, so she flies off into space with Zastan right behind her. The next day, Rito tries to convince himself that it's better this way, but much to his surprise, Lala cheerfully shows up at class. He then explains to her how he doesn't want to take part in intergalactic wars, although Lala explains that he doesn't have to if he doesn't want to. Lala then states that once they're married, she would stay with him on Earth. She then revealed that she gathered ingredients from space to cook for him, and as she prepares to cook, she gets the ingredients out of her chili container can. Meanwhile, Haruna, on the search for the two of them, finally comes in and asks what's going on. So Rito tries to explain the situation, but a huge octopus appears out of Lala's invention and grabs Haruna. Eventually, Rito and Lala are grabbed as well, so Zastan comes in to rescue them, but is stopped by a gigantic squid. Zastan then gets up only to be stopped by a giant lobster, followed by a giant worm-like creature who joins in on the fight, causing much destruction upon the school. Thus, Rito claims that this is worse than an intergalactic war. After the intergalactic war, we get introduced to Saki Tenjuin, a popular and rich student admired by everyone. On her way in, she notices Lala garnering a lot of attention, and as the days go by, she feels that her place is threatened as Lala keeps getting more attention, leaving Saki unnoticeable, causing her to believe that Lala is trying to provoke her. As such, Saki has her two bodyguards send a written message to Lala, challenging her for the title of Miss Seinen in a swimsuit contest. Outside the school, Saki already has the stage prepared and while waiting, shows off her swimsuit. Elsewhere, Lala and Paik discuss the message she got with Zastan, who believes it might be an assassination attempt. Thus, he asks to see the message only to find it chewed by Lala's invention. Nevertheless, back at the contest, Saki becomes frustrated and waiting for Lala, so she declares herself the winner. However, the audience is not satisfied. Eventually, she hears that Lala has a fiance, so Saki comes up with a plan to draw her out. Thus, Saki has Aya take Rito hostage by using a crane and takes him to her to sussy touch her, thereby claiming him hers unless Lala shows up. Rito, however, is not up with the idea, especially with Haruna watching. Lala then actually shows up with Zastin running into Saki, where she yells at Lala for what happened, and her invention exposes her to everyone, causing her to run away, leaving Lala clueless what's going on. After school, Ada finds out that Lala might have a secret, unaware that she's an alien, and reports to Saki, who plans on finding out what the secret. At night, Saki and her bodyguards try to sneak in Yuki's house to discover the secret. However, they trigger a trap that Zastin had put in beforehand, causing both Rin and Aya to flee the house, leaving her behind alone. She then tries to escape but falls into a trapdoor oddly connected to Rito's room. When Lala is about to enter the room, Saki hides under the desk with a camera ready, but she accidentally presses a button that ejects the whole room into the sky. Now terrified and confused, she pops out and asks Lala what's going on. Meanwhile, Zastin and the headhunters on a ship to stop the capsule, but Lala accidentally shoots missiles at them and flies off even faster, causing Saki to fall off the house. Lala then jumps out to save Saki, who just ends up fainting. Now waking up in the middle of a street, a disoriented Saki wonders if everything was just a dream. Upon regaining her senses surrounded by a crowd of men, Saki realizes that she's missing things. Embarrassed, Saki blames Lala again for public humiliation and begins to continually hate her. Back in space, Zastin and his subordinates detect something heading towards Earth, so he decides to leave the situation to Rito. It then lands on the roof of Satan High, revealed to be an alien in desperate need to use the toilet. The alien, known as Gibri, sniffs the school in search of Lala, where he finds her in a classroom dissecting frogs. As she wonders the point of the lesson, Bree notices how close Lala is with Rito and realizes that he is her fiancé, but also notices how he looks at Haruna, figuring out that he has feelings for her. The principal then comes toward Bree, so he transforms into his look-alike and knocks out the principal and hides him away. During lunchtime, Bree comes in the classroom and orders Haruna to come with him, where he also tells Sariyama to tell Rito of what's happened. Meanwhile, on the roof, Lala continues to chase Rito to dissect him, but Sariyama comes in and tells him that the principal took Haruna to the sports shed. Rito then leaves Sariyama to occupy Lala, so he lets her dissect him instead. On the other hand, Rito finds Haruna tied and being grouped by tentacles, where the principal reveals his alien form and tells him to leave Lala, so he can marry her and become the successor to the Devilu throne. Luckily, Lala gets tired of waiting for Rito, so Peak tells her that she might have been deceived, but Lala believes otherwise. As such, Lala summons an invention to trace Rito, where it leads her into the girls' locker room sniffing for other girls. Back at the sports shed, Bree continues to warn Rito to cancel the engagement or else he will sussy torture Haruna further. Rito obviously gets mad and begins yelling at him, but Lala manages to find him and she instantly recognizes Bree. Now getting serious, Bree turns into his monster form to scare them, but Chad Rito attacks him as distraction for Lala to take Haruna away. However, Bree gets scared, but he acts like nothing happened, so Rito scares him again, causing him to turn into his true form. Peak then explains that he's a Balkan and weak alien race but able to shapeshift. Bree then tries to escape but is stopped by his wife, who reveals that he has tricked women into marriage all over the universe, so Lala calls another one of her inventions to flush them all away into space. Meanwhile in space, Zastin is enjoying a bath only to be ruined as Bree and his family get teleported there. Back on Earth, Haruna wakes up in front of Lala, who tells her that she passed out due to anemia and that it was Rito who saved her. On the other hand, Rito also forgot that he left the principal tied up in the shed, while his friend falls into a crater. The next day, while Rito is running late, he encounters a girl in a boy's uniform. He then tells her to hurry up to school, but she doesn't seem to mind. Later, outside Singen High School, someone notes that she's here, revealing the same girl from earlier is a transfer into Rito's class named Renalise Juleria. Somehow, all the girls take a liking to her boyish looks, so he goes to Lala and claims her as bride. However, Sariyama interferes and asks how he knows Lala, so Ren shows a picture of them as kids, so Lala remembers him as her childhood friend. Ren then explained that they had such a great time together that she promised to marry her if she became a man. As such, he tries to prove he's better than Rito in pointless challenges. But despite all his efforts, Lala has no care at all for him in his games. Meanwhile, Rito starts to think that if Lala were to love Ren, they would go back into space and he can now be with Haruna, but then snaps out of it when Ren comes along. Suddenly, someone accidentally pushed Ren, causing him to kiss Rito, much to their disgust. Afterwards, Ren asks advice on how to become a man, but receives very odd suggestions where he mixes them together, so Lala ends up saying he looks funny. Afterwards, Ren comes across a theater playing a movie called Man, so he goes to see it. After the movie ends, Ren is moved and inspired to become a man by reenacting the movie in his own way. Over time, Ren somehow has become famous, so Rito advises Lala to tell him that he has become manly enough before it becomes too much, but Ren believes he has not become a real man yet. He continues his training by completing impressive feats like going up against the Western Japanese gang, climbing a frigid mountain to fight Bigfoot, and wrestling anyone where he manages to pull through. Adult Ren then completes a 120-mile run for his final trial, and when finished, he accidentally sneezes and turns back into a girl, the same girl Rito met in the beginning. It turns out that Ren's alien race is a Memorizine, who are able to change gender with certain triggers. Thus, Lala concludes that a girl cannot be manly at all. The next day, Lala awaits Rito at school, but he takes too long, so she uses a magnet invention to bring him in faster. Unfortunately, he was using the bathroom. Ren then comes in and hugs Rito after she somehow fell in love, so she tried to kiss him, but he's able to escape. Meanwhile, Saki and her friends come in declaring they want a rematch with Lala, otherwise she will take Rito from her. However, Kotagawa Yu steps in, but no one cared. Ren then tries to kiss Rito again, but she sneezes and transforms. As such, Yu then begins to keep an eye on Rito, believing that he is the cause of all things sussy. Now determined to perfect the school, she gets the disciplinary committee to enforce rules onto the student body. However, some girls are displeased like Lala, so she grabs her almighty tool to fix skirts only for Yu to confiscate it. However, it activates, turning her uniform into a more revealing version. Thus, Yu uses the principal to punish Rito by forbidding him to make any contact with girls for 2 weeks. He's then guarded inside a classroom to not go anywhere near any girls, which finally gives the other boys a chance to talk to Lala. Afterwards, just when Yu believes that she has cured the immoral school, sussy things continue to happen. Nevertheless, Yu follows Rito after school to find out if he's really the cause. However, she notices how wrong she was when finding out about his selfless actions, and she even joins him to help a lost girl find her mom. After seeing what a kind person Rito is, Yu gains feelings for him, so she apologizes to him and removes his punishment. Elsewhere, Lala gathers some friends together to cheer up Rito and uses her magnet invention to bring him in, causing Rito to run out of control, while also accidentally taking Yu with him, causing all sorts of mishaps. The next day at school, Lala goes to say hello to Yu, but accidentally bumps into Rito, causing Paige to fall off, leaving her in a compromising position. Yu then shouts at him and leaves him with another sign saying worthless, much to his chagrin.